Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Jennifer Surtees, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2, Garth Bateau. This evening's last post ceremony commemorates the 75th anniversary of a kamikaze attack on HMAS Australia during the Battle of Lingayen Gulf in the Second World War. Lingayen Gulf in the Philippines had been a strategic position for the Japanese and Allied forces for the duration of the war. In early 1945, an Allied amphibious operation was underway with Allied warships bombarding suspected Japanese positions along the Lingayen coast from the Gulf. On the 5th of January 1945, a kamikaze dive was made vertically into HMAS Australia's upper deck amidships on the port side. The explosion killed 25 and wounded 30 of the cruiser's crew. A fire set by the explosion was soon extinguished, and reports indicated damage was slight and fighting efficiency was not greatly impaired. Over the following days, however, HMAS Australia would be subjected to multiple attacks until she was badly damaged on the 9th of January and ordered to return to Sydney for repairs. Today, we remember and honour HMAS Australia and all those who served and sacrificed with her during the Second World War. Shortly, we will tell the story of Lieutenant Commander Harrie Gerrett, who was killed in an earlier kamikaze attack on HMAS Australia. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge Captain Sean Andrews, Director of the Sea Power Centre, who is representing the Royal Australian Navy, and a representative of the Australian Naval Association ACT branch. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story of just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. Following the reading of the story of Lieutenant Commander Harrie Gerrett, wreaths will be laid at his photograph.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Commander Harrie Gerrett. Harrie Gerrett was born at Kogarah Fire Station in Sydney on the 5th of November 1912, the son of James, District Officer of the Fire Brigades in the area, and Hannah Gerrett. Young Harrie Gerrett studied for the Navy as a schoolboy and entered Naval College at Jervis Bay in 1926, the year he turned 14. After 4 years at the college, he joined HMAS Australia as a midshipman, before serving 4 years in a naval college in England. After being issued a commission on the 21st of March 1934, he returned to HMAS Australia and served on HMAS Waterhen and Vendetta. Gerrett next joined HMAS Canberra as a lieutenant in 1937. On the 12th of July, Harrie Gerrett married Virginia Ransom. The two had kept their engagement a secret, and while Gerrett was on leave, they decided to get married, giving themselves only 3 days to make the arrangements. The couple would later have 2 daughters, Carolyn and Rosemary. After the wedding, Gerrett returned to England to take an aircraft observer's course. He was next transferred to the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal, part of the Royal Navy, and was serving there when the Second World War broke out. He was on the Ark Royal until July 1940 and was mentioned in dispatches for gallantry and devotion to duty in the Mediterranean. His next posting was to the battleship HMS King George V. With that ship, he took part in the action which sank the German battleship Bismarck in May 1941. Gerrett returned to Australia later that year, and after serving a short term on the Canberra, was transferred back to Australia as a Lieutenant Commander, where he served during actions in the Pacific. A report about his conduct of March 1944 noted that while he was disappointed at being unable to follow an observer's career, he had abandoned his specialisation and applied himself more actively to his ship's duties, and would be suitable as First Lieutenant of a small cruiser in a few months' time. In October 1944, more than 4,000 Australians were involved in the efforts to free the Philippines from Japanese occupation. All three Australian services participated in the campaign in some capacity, but it was the Royal Australian Navy which bore the greatest losses. Australian cruisers, destroyers, frigates, troop transports and other smaller ships operated closely with the United States Navy, and HMAS Australia suffered the worst casualties. This action took place during the Philippines campaign in Leyte Gulf on the 21st of October 1944. The Australia was struck by a Japanese dive bomber which crashed into its port side. 30 men were killed or died from their wounds, and 65 were wounded. Among the dead was Lieutenant Commander Harrie bin Gerrett, who was 31 years old. With no grave at the sea, today he is commemorated on the Plymouth Naval Memorial in England, which honours more than 7,200 sailors of the First World War and nearly 16,000 of the Second World War. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today here in Anzac Hall. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Commander Harrie bin Gerrett, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand and remove hats for the reading of the Naval Ode, followed by the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old as we to the left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. Tonight, our piper will play Lament for you, Flowers of the Forest, as you leave Anzac Hall. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.